Welcome to the Think Forward podcast, where we speak with futurists, innovators, and big thinkers. Come along with your host, Steve Fisher, and explore the future together.
Welcome back to Foundations in Foresight, a Think Forward series. I'm Steve Fisher, and today we're diving deeper into world building as part of the Spectrum Foresight method. Specifically, how to map your future using supershifts, trends, drivers, and complex systems. When we're exploring the future, it's essential to look beyond isolated events and individual changes. Sure, spotting trends and identifying signals is important, but to truly capture the scope of tomorrow's possibilities, we need to focus on something even bigger and more profound. We call these massive transformative forces supershifts. If you're new to this series, or if you've been with us for a while, it's worth remembering what supershifts really are. They're not your ordinary trends. They're deep, sweeping changes that reshape our societies, economies, technologies, and even our culture at a fundamental level. Think about them as the powerful undercurrents driving the significant shifts we see on the surface of our lives. For instance, let's talk about digital transformation as a supershift. It isn't just about new tech gadgets or software updates. Digital transformation is fundamentally changing how businesses operate, how education is delivered, and even how governments serve their citizens. It's redefining our very notions of privacy, connectivity, and productivity. Another example is climate consciousness. We're not just seeing more electric cars or recycling initiatives, we're experiencing a wholesale shift in how society thinks about sustainability, energy use, and our relationship with the planet. These are the kinds of profound, deep-rooted transformations we mean when we say supershifts. Understanding and using supershifts in your foresight practice gives you tremendous strategic depth. They help you step away from incremental thinking and move toward transformative perspectives. They invite you to consider the deeper currents of change, enabling you to create future scenarios that are richer, more comprehensive, and far more useful for long-term strategic planning. Now, once we've established the importance of supershifts, the next step is understanding how these connect to the trends we often discuss. Trends are the visible indicators, the surface-level manifestations of these deeper supershifts. For instance, the rising popularity of remote work, telemedicine, and online education are visible trends that stem from the broader supershift of digital transformation. Trends give us practical, everyday insights into how these deeper currents of change are playing out. They help us see tangible evidence of these powerful supershifts in action. But to use trends effectively, it's crucial to remember that they're not standalone events. They're interconnected reflections of deeper, more complex forces. And that brings us to the concept of drivers. Drivers are the underlying factors, the why behind the trends and supershifts we observe. Think about drivers as the engines that push changes forward. They could be technological advancements, evolving cultural values, economic pressures, or even unexpected global events. Let's take a closer look at a practical example. Consider again the trend of remote work. The drivers behind this include advancements in high-speed internet and cloud technologies, changing generational values that prioritize flexibility and work-life balance, economic imperatives such as reducing office costs, and global disruptions like the COVID-19 pandemic that accelerated these shifts overnight. By clearly understanding these drivers, you're not just observing trends, you're getting insight into why these trends are happening. You're peering behind the curtain, seeing the mechanisms that make these changes inevitable and ongoing. Understanding these drivers gives you a tremendous strategic advantage, allowing you to anticipate how these forces might evolve in the future. So how do we bring all these elements, supershifts, trends, and drivers, together in our foresight practice? That's where the concept of systems mapping comes in. Systems mapping is a powerful way to visualize and understand how these elements interact with and influence each other. It's about creating a comprehensive, interconnected picture of future possibilities. Picture this as a dynamic web or network. Every supershift, trend, and driver is interconnected, influencing and shaped by the others. If you move one piece, it impacts many others. That's exactly how the future works. Nothing exists in isolation. Let's return to our earlier example of digital transformation and remote work. As we map this out in a systems approach, we might see how technology advancements, a driver, fuel greater remote work adoption, a trend. This in turn impacts other areas of society like urban planning as people choose to live farther from urban centers. It influences economic systems as regional economies shift and adapt. Even governmental policies might change to regulate new digital work environments. When mapping these interactions clearly, we can see both the opportunities and the risks in the systems we're exploring. Systems mapping helps you identify potential feedback loops or unintended consequences that might not be obvious at first glance. It reveals the subtle, yet powerful interconnections between the elements of your future world. Why is this critical? Because foresight isn't just about identifying individual changes. It's about understanding how those changes ripple outward, creating new opportunities or challenges. It's about seeing the bigger interconnected picture, ensuring your foresight practice is comprehensive, robust, and deeply strategic. Moreover, systems mapping provides the foundational structure needed for advanced spectrum layer analysis and spectrum scenario creation, two powerful tools within the Spectrum Foresight method. By clearly visualizing how supershifts, trends, and drivers interact, you're preparing yourself and your organization for deeper, more nuanced strategic analysis. But before we wrap up, let's talk about some practical considerations and potential pitfalls when doing systems mapping. First, be mindful of complexity. It's easy to get overwhelmed when you start seeing all the interconnections. The key is to balance detail with clarity. Keep your maps clear, intuitive, and accessible so your team can quickly grasp key insights and implications. Second, stay flexible. Your systems map is not a static product. It's a dynamic tool. As new information becomes available, be ready to adjust and refine your map. Regular updates keep your foresight fresh, relevant, and strategically valuable. Third, communication is key. Ensure that your maps are presented in ways that are understandable and actionable for all stakeholders involved. Clearly articulate how each element in your map affects the strategic decisions facing your organization. Make sure everyone sees the relevance and importance of these interconnected future possibilities. Finally, embrace diversity of thought in your mapping. The best systems maps incorporate diverse perspectives, challenging your assumptions and enhancing your strategic understanding. Invite feedback, discussion, and debate around your systems maps. This process enriches your foresight practice, ensuring it's comprehensive and robust. Let's summarize today's key ideas. We began by deepening our understanding of supershifts, recognizing them as powerful transformative forces shaping our future. We explored how trends and drivers connect to these deeper shifts, providing tangible and practical insights, and we examined how systems mapping helps us visualize and strategically use these connections within the Spectrum Foresight method. Now, as we close, here's a practical step for you. Identify one super shift that you see profoundly impacting your industry, community, or personal life. Clearly define this super shift. List some significant trends that stem from it and the key drivers behind those trends. Then, start mapping how these elements interact. Even a simple map will start providing you immediate strategic insights. Looking ahead, our next episode in this series will focus on designing the physical and digital infrastructures that reflect these mapped supershifts, trends, and drivers. We'll get even more hands-on, showing you how to practically embed these insights into your planning, policymaking, or strategic decision-making processes. World building isn't merely a creative exercise. It's a core strategic tool within the Spectrum Foresight method. It prepares you for deeper spectrum layer analysis and the creation of detailed, insightful spectrum scenarios, helping you navigate and shape complex futures confidently. Thank you again for joining me today on Foundations in Foresight. Keep connecting those dots, keep imagining vivid future worlds, and as always, think forward.
Thanks for listening to the Think Forward podcast. You can find us on all the major podcast platforms and at www.thinkforwardshow.com, as well as on YouTube under Think Forward Show. See you next time.